There's no fire, but
I know, and it was a
enjoy
little
this
chilly,
fireside.
wasn't it? It was a little chilly when we got started.
Yes. So let's start off with a little bit about your background. You've been in the EV space for 7 years or so, right? Several years.
Yeah.
What kind of trends have you seen? What's been happening, especially in this last year that you've been with VinFast?
Sure. So I did start the earliest parts of my career in sort of utility infrastructure, construction, and had an opportunity about 7 years ago to put the first chargers in the ground in my career. It was an exciting time to see the merge of two of my career passions and paths where I'm a car freak, I'm a car guy. I love to go fast, I love to drive. And I've worked in the electrical engineering space for a long time, and it's the first time I've seen those two paths come together. And putting charging in the ground, as we found out, was hard. Construction costs are exorbitant in comparison to some of the equipment. Even the early equipment was very expensive. But as over these last 6-7 years, we've watched Gen 1 turn into Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4, Gen 5 on the horizon, products being deployed out in the field. I've seen all different modalities start to electrify. Some of the earliest adopters were e-bus and fleet programs with e-truck. And this was a great way to watch the industry start to scale production of lithium-based chemistries, scaling costs and efficiencies, but also sort of proving to the industry that this technology could work with continuous improvement and quality improvement. So I think the last 7 years, up until this point now, it has been, I remember maybe 2 years ago, spending some time at expos and trade shows talking about it's no longer niche adopters. We're moving into what feels like on the verge of mass adoption beginning, and here we are. And I appreciate the points at the opening remarks here. No, I don't feel like it has stalled. I think we're on the precipice of making this technology attainable and approachable for the masses.
Seems like VinFast is in a good space because you are the new kid on the block, right? I'm not going to bust out in song.
Oh, I feel like the old kid. I feel like a very old kid.
It's a good time for you to enter the market, especially in the U.S. I think attitudes are shifting, charging is expanding. You know, what do you see from the VinFast perspective?
Sure. A couple things that we focus on, and then just sort of observations that I've seen in the market. I think if you look at, as has been pointed out, and I'm sure everyone has heard over and over again, the first products in the EV space, in the light-duty vehicle and consumer space, have really been towards early adopter, tech-forward, sort of higher dollar value, up in that more of an affluent purchasing power market segment. And that market has been a little saturated. What I think we want to make sure that we focus on is having a broad portfolio of offerings that sort of serve both ends of that spectrum as we see this continuing market evolve. But the other thing that we want to continue to focus in on is who is the new EV adopter? Who is that customer? Is it someone who goes out and educates themselves before they buy a car, as most consumers do? It's the second largest purchase you make, so of course you're going to spend some time researching. But researching an ICE vehicle before you made a new purchase was something that you came into that self-education process with a bit of background already. You've done it before, you've seen it before, your parents had cars. It wasn't something that was a new discovery path. It almost felt like the earliest of adopters who maybe didn't come from an engineering background had to go out and get engineering degrees to understand what a kilowatt hour was, right? But what we would want to focus on, at least on our side, and I hope so for the industry, is simplifying and demystifying a lot of this technology. It's not rocket science when you really break it down.
Right, but it's definitely a shift, right? People are getting used to the way EVs work, how to charge them, where to charge them. And one way I know that VinFast is working on that is the app that you have that's kind of pulling a lot of things together to simplify. Sure.
And the app. Another app.
Another app.
No, and I think just saying that out loud, another app, is the reason why we have the app. We wanted not just a compendium component to the vehicle. The customer experience with charging has been very painful. I think there's a J.D. Power study that I saw online not too long back that the number one reason why an EV adopter might consider trading in the car, going back to an ICE, or the number one reason why someone who's yet to convert and is avoiding doing so is because of distrust in public charging. So right off the bat, as a newcomer to the North American market, an emerging brand, we could have gone the route and built our own network, solve that problem, make it simple. It's very expensive, and we've got to focus on a car. We've got to focus on continuous improvements and customer experiences. So in doing so, we also want to see that the entire market rises to the occasion. So we partnered with just about every CPO partner that's out there today and growing. And if there's a CPO partner out there that I haven't talked to, please call, let's chat. And we have directly integrated all of those CPO partners through that app so that you don't have to have 7 more charging apps. So you don't have to load your credit card 7 more times as a VinFast customer. And you can travel, start, stop, find, waypoint charging en route, send that to the navigation system. You can get up in the morning, start the car up while you're making your coffee, turn the heated seats on or the ventilated seats, depending on where you are in the world, and get the car to the temperature of your liking and set your route for the day and where you're going to find charging en route, all from that app. And it does simplify that experience. That's the focus, so that the masses, as they start to ease into the idea of buying an electric vehicle, they don't have to then learn about, after the sale process, all these other things they have to go do to learn how to operate their vehicle.
Right, it can be confusing. I've definitely had the experience, not in a VinFast, but where the charging cord got stuck. And
Sure.
I couldn't figure out how to get it out. I had an experience where a bird attacked me at a public charging station. It was really
I don't know if we have a bird protection feature we're working on, but the cord getting stuck does bring up a good point. And the term interoperability was mentioned earlier, and you'll hear more of these terms over and over again. When we as an OEM want to build this massive partnership pool of not just ecosystem partners like the charger CPOs, but the digital in-cloud experiences, customer experiences, all the different APIs that have to work together, the E-MTB aggregator services, all of that stitch work is very complicated. And so interoperability, testing, and validation are so important when you're bringing a new product to market. So that has definitely been the cornerstone of how I've continued to oversee the charging business here. I'm actually going to be in a test lab all week next week, and the following week I'll be at the Char and Testival in Ohio. So bringing the car out, testing against all this equipment, working with the partners in open transparency and having communication is really how we sort of fight that bad customer experience going forward.
You very deliberately, your title is Head of Charging and Energy.
Yeah.
Tell me more about the distinction and what that's going to mean for you going forward.
Sure, yeah. Also because then as a startup, I get to wear a bunch of hats, so I'll just and over time, right? But energy is an interesting concept. I was just in Detroit at another show and talking with several OEMs up in Detroit. And one of the conversations we're having in a sort of a workshop session was about customer experiences and subscription services. It's a hot topic in industry. And what is the school of thought surrounding capturing that customer, keeping them in your ecosystem, and continuously deploying new features and something that might keep them coming back to you for more experiences, more feature enablement, more feature-rich experience. And it was a lot of the conversation was focused on things that are very valuable to customers and will continue to be: streaming services, music services, what kind of ecosystem you have in your infotainment system, and what can you enable in things like ADAS technologies. But when I say energy, and when you think about the fueling experience and where the OEM sits, where a customer sits in the EV future versus where they ever have been in liquid fuels, the OEM gets to participate in the retailing of energy in a new way. It's kind of an interesting idea to think about a future where your energy and your ownership experience come together with a lease payment, or come together with the purchasing of a vehicle with a subsidy that includes a commitment to energy over time. How does an OEM get to participate in the retail energy market with these wholesalers of retail energy, the CPO providers, and help simplify that experience for customers? If you drive an EV cross country, you're going to have to start to map out using some great tools that exist out there. There's great like PlugShare and ChargeHub, and folks have put some great mapping tools out there. But you start to map out, where is there a volatile rate structure? When is rack rate higher versus demand charges? And when is there a demand offset? When is there a time of use contracting structure where my charging is cheaper when I'm out in the wild? And for a user, especially that mass adopter user, you don't want to sit there and bring a spreadsheet with you to plan your route. You don't want to have to learn that. So if an OEM can work with all of these partners, pool them together, work on mass sort of homogenization of those rate structures, we can flatten that curve for customers and keep it simple.
I think there's definitely customers who, or potential customers who may be considering an EV, but they're thinking, I don't know if I can take that on a road trip. You know, like here in Texas, here in Austin, the infrastructure is terrific. Try to go out to West Texas, that's a challenge. How do you see that evolving?
Sure. Well, again, sort of everyone and every player in the ecosystem, continuous improvement, and we all have to work together. So I also have the pleasure of sitting on one of the joint office task forces called the Charging Experience Consortium. And all the OEMs and industry partners come together and influence or speak to what is the best charging customer experience that nationally we should expect, and sort of setting that standard, setting KPIs to measure each other against, to sort of motivate continuous improvement, reliable charging that's online, and telling the world through OCPI and OCPP, I'm online and healthy, and I'm not currently being used, and having high fidelity of accuracy. So we want to make sure that we participate in that with this ecosystem we've built through this partnership and continuously providing feedback. We can get feedback from customers. We can send back sort of POI feedback data to the CPOs. Your chargers here have been more reliable. Why is it our customers keep gravitating toward this charger and not that charger? Hey, there's a blackout in the map here when I look at Texas. Who's going to be the one to bring and bridge the gap between Houston and Austin? How are we going to do that together? And how do I work to make sure that I provide you the feedback of where my customers are gravitating towards? Where are we selling vehicles? Where are we seeing more density of desire to charge? That's valuable information for them to make that decision to go and put a charger in the ground. So I think we cannot look at it purely as a punitive thing where you set a KPI and maybe make a modification to Title 23 and NEVI provisions to say that if you don't meet uptime, you pay back the money. I think that right now in this early part of continuing to develop charging infrastructure in this country is not how we will promote good behaviors. We need to work on working together on that.
Right, at the same time, manufacturers are working toward or looking at different kinds of battery technologies, battery chemistry. What kind of battery technology trends are you seeing? And you have your own. VinFast has its own battery division, correct?
Sure, there's plenty of news that has come out about our acquisition of VinES, our battery manufacturing, cell and pack manufacturing company. Bringing it into the automotive fold is an interesting thing that we will see develop as we continue to stand up our factory in North Carolina, where I'm based. But I think, again, there's still room for plenty of partnership as we have seen. But I'll comment first on where do we see the market. And I do want to acknowledge there's always this sort of dichotomy or this bifurcation between what the consumer wants and what the market is telling them they might need. And it's our jobs as industry insiders, as evangelists that want to see the EV technology continue to propel, to sort of remind folks that right now in battery technology, if you want 500, 600, 700 miles range someday, if you want thermal charging rates that allow the 10-minute charge on a 150 kilowatt hour battery, it's going to cost a premium right now. So while we want this industry to continue to scale so that those costs do come down as those technologies proliferate, we have to consider also there's a part of this market, there's a use case for maybe a smaller battery, or maybe a chemistry that aligns itself well to city driving, metropolitan driving, or there's other modalities that need to adopt a different chemistry so that the light-duty vehicle space benefits from it. But in that, I'll also come back to where we're the topic at hand here in charging, and say that if we were to say that there's a use case for a smaller battery, a smaller vehicle, with all that is happening in the economic market right now, charging has to be reliable. We have to have more reliable charging readily available so that someone who does those waypoint charges knows they're going to get a reliable charge when they get there.
Let's shift just a little bit to connected car technology, because you and I have talked about that a little bit. I think that's interesting and it has so much potential. Talk a little bit about what that means and what you're doing with that.
Sure. Connected car is a broad term, and there's a lot of things that live outside the vehicle. The phone is the example we constantly go to in the EV space, but it's ubiquitous in just sort of, it's always with the user, it's always with the owner. We have our phones with us now. And so bringing the phone into the car has everything to do with how do you bring services you already have into the car experience. I'll give you one good example. I'm very interested in where the state of technology is today, even with high power charging. There's a bit of a dwell time while you charge. What do we want to provide as a feature-rich, connected car experience for someone who's sitting in their car, waiting for 25 minutes, 30 minutes? Let's give them something to do that's entertaining. And the whole ethos around, does that live on the phone, or do we draw their attention to this very beautiful, large infotainment screen that lives right there in the front of the car? And can we provide some sort of entertainment to ease the pain of the current state of technology with longer dwell times for charging?
Definitely seems like EVs and cars in general are becoming more of a room where people want to hang out.
Sure.
And stop, you're in the school pickup line, you need some infotainment.
I mean, at 6'8", you wouldn't think I want to hang out in a car while I'm charging, but I often do. I'm often out in the road doing interrupt testing or field testing with different of the chargers. And I live in Raleigh, and there's a lot of great charging in the area finally. And I'm always out there, and I'm always just sitting in the car. And I'll always have someone eventually come up and, hey, what's that? What are you doing? And I think that's kind of, sort of moving a little bit on a tangent here, but it's kind of the fun thing right now still in the industry is it's a geeky, it's cool, it's a fun tech, and it's a little car show every time you go to a charging station. Everyone wants to come over. What are you working on? What are you doing? And I'm also sitting there with my laptop, and I'm plugged into diagnostic ports, and I'm doing some things like, hey, come check this out. So it is a room for me. It's also a home office for me. It's a rolling office for me, and focusing on that experience while charging has been kind of an easy thing to deal with right now.
For VinFast specifically, what do people ask you when they see you driving one around? What are they curious about?
Oh, sure. When I first started, it was, what's a VinFast? But now it's, especially in Raleigh where I live, it's exciting. Actually, I've seen around the greater Raleigh-Durham area, because there's a lot of news about the factory. We're building the factory. There's going to be 7,200 jobs added by 2025. And I'm out with I've lived in Raleigh for 30 years. I go and talk to my alma mater, elementary and middle and high school, and my college at NC State University. We do workforce development programs and career fairs. And I'm out talking to kids about career paths in the automotive industry. These are all things we couldn't have talked about in North Carolina if it wasn't for VinFast in the last few years. But because of that and the buzz around it, people are asking about the car. When is it coming? When can I get my hands on one in North Carolina? The amount of times I get at a red light, I'm sitting there driving, and I look in my rear view, and there's someone snapping a picture, and I wonder where they're going to post that. I got to hunt that down. And it's been a little, it's like driving around a little celebrity. It's been fun.
So you can't go hanging out in your pajamas driving the car around because you're going to get snapped by someone.
No, probably not. But that doesn't mean I'm necessarily dressed in a blazer and my cowboy boots either. It's definitely casual and getting out there at a charging station and getting out of the car and more focusing on, hey, check out the car. Let's talk about it. What are you driving and what's your experience been at charging? It's been a lot of fun.
Really interesting. Thank you so much, Sean.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
It's been a pleasure.
it.